rain? Did you guys have crazy rain during that storm Monday, Tuesday?
I was in San Francisco, and it was raining all day on Monday.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
well, Sunday, I think. It was raining all day Sunday, and then I came home mid-Monday.
Okay.
But yeah, it was pretty heavy rain. It was good, though. I mean, I always like it when it rains.
All right, good.
Yeah. How about you?
We had lots. I mean, this is like totally a drought area with lots of desert conditions, and we just had that crazy wildfire. We had lots of rain, and that triggered mudslides, not in my town, but just a couple of towns south and west of here that were really very devastating. And a couple of people, like maybe more than a dozen people died. So it's been very, like people were really concerned. I thought they were all being nervous Nellies, like, oh no, rain is coming, blah, blah. Like when it doesn't rain someplace for a long time and everyone's just needlessly, silly about it. But it really was something to be concerned about, and it really caused a lot of death.
Wow. Mudslides, huh?
Yes, it was in Montecito, so it's this place where it's like a pretty fancy place, and it seems like some of the houses that were devastated were really multi-million-dollar houses too.
Yeah. That's how the fires in NorCal were. They were all at like rich neighborhoods, or for the most part, really like mansions and things like that.
Interesting.
I did a video. I don't know if you saw that one, but I drove through one of the cities in. I took a passenger up north to Santa Rosa, I think it was. And my passenger, I was asking him about it because he lived in a nearby city, and he was explaining his experience of the fire, and he directed me to a neighborhood that had been decimated. So I just drove through that neighborhood and took a video, like a 7-minute video of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. Like the houses were just completely. It looked like a war zone.
That's exactly what our town felt like. This whole area felt like it felt like a war zone, and I think it's part of this interdimensional spiritual battle that is like percolating up into earthly mundane events.
Yeah. And the regular news was very suspiciously quiet about probable causes and things like that. Even more so than normal. Normally they'll at least have an arson suspect or something, but they didn't really say much of anything.
With the one up in Santa Rosa, I don't know what they're investigating, but down here, the local CAL FIRE is actually investigating Edison, which is the electrical company, in terms of there were two sources of the fire, and one that was on Königsberg Road was an exploding transformer. Like it suddenly overloaded and exploded and created this forest fire, this spreading fire. And then one they said was from sparks from a work site, and that they were both connected to the energy company. So if that's true, I don't know if they were looking into smart meters or anything, more exotic or fringe like that. Yeah. But if that's true, then that's a huge class action suit of billions of dollars for property damage and millions of dollars in firefighting costs. So it should be really interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what the official cause will be if that ever comes out.
Yeah.
And if it will ever be acknowledged, the strangeness of the fires and the temperature and the metals that were melting and things like that.
The weird burn pattern. So not necessarily in Ojai. In Ojai, it made sense. The buildings that burned were the ones that were literally like in the mountains that were not easily defensible, and the ones that were in the town were fine. But down in Ventura, the houses that burned, they were all kind of like in this neighborhood, like what some of them burned and then one is fine, and the trees are all fine. It was totally weird, atypical burn pattern that was going down. That's like the City 1 South City of Me. So something definitely weird was going on down there.
Yeah. It was precise. But this is burned and then 2 inches over. This is totally fine.
Exactly. And there was even some videos while it was going on of like a house, and it seemed like the fire was arising internally from the house. It didn't look like it went from a tree to a bush to the house. It looked like that everything is fine around the house, and all of a sudden the house starts to turn on fire from inside out. So there's real questions about that. And, I'm happy to see like scrutiny is being focused on. It's not being lost in the shuffle. It was an enormous event, so people are definitely watching.
Yeah, there was also a really viral video of a tree that was on fire from the inside. Like the outside wasn't even burning. It was a tree in Northern California, and it was literally like glowing from the inside.
Yeah. That's not normal. We can all tell what's not normal. It's amazing.
Right.
But it's amazing the mental like acrobatics that people go through in order to like like convince themselves that that's perfectly normal. Like, that is perfectly normal, blah, blah, blah. And there's scientific information for it. Like, that is not normal, people. You can tell.
Yeah, it's called blocking so you don't fracture your psyche. That's
right. Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
But anyway, did you have anything in particular you wanted to discuss today? I'm always open to whatever. I don't usually have agendas for when I have people on, but it's kind of up to you as to what you would like to discuss.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm also very open to having a wide-ranging conversation. But I watched one of your videos that you talked about NCP, and I'd never heard that term before.
NPC. NPC.
Say it again?
NPC.
So it's NPC.
Right.
So it stands for
non-player character.
Player character.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting concept to me, and I watched a couple of other videos by other people that use that same term in order to learn about it, and I would love to talk with you more, and that's why I wanted to draw some diagrams in order to try to talk about this, and also this idea of synthetic people, which is a little bit different than NPC, but I think the idea is, I think a lot of people are starting to begin to see and perceive with their inner vision, which is more of like a feeling about how real is reality, and I think that it's good to start to have this conversation about who are we really talking to, and who's real, who's really real, and who is everything, and what is everything. Like, I think that's a very valuable conversation.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool.
There's also the NPC thing it's not new to me. Somebody called Dolores Cannon, I mentioned her in other videos too, but she passed away, but what she called them backfill people. So if we're here on a stage, so to speak, the backfill people are just like the props. They're supporting cast for your scene, essentially.
Right.
Yeah. I assume they're the same thing as NPCs.
Did Dolores Cannon write about walk-ins? Is this the same person that I'm kind of knowing about?
Possibly. Yeah, she was pretty popular when she was around, and controversial as well, as most people who talk about those things are. But she was very open and loving in her delivery of her message, and I think a lot of people resonated with it. So what do you think about NPCs?
Are we recording yet?
Oh, we've been recording.
Just checking. Okay, good. Okay, so I'm grabbing my little pen here so that I can draw pictures. So wait, there. All right, now. So the first thing is this shape here, which is the shape of time, and this relates to the different energy centers on our body. So when I draw these little diagrams, I'm drawing simplifications of this shape. We are made of timelines, and we have a focus of attention. So if I'm going to draw this lower portion of the sculpture, but if I turn it on end, you can see that it's shaped kind of like a bullseye. And there's this outer periphery, and then there's the center of the bullseye, and we're all trying to put our arrow of awareness to go down the center of the bullseye. But what has been happening because of the genetic degradation that humanity experienced over 10,000 years ago, that we don't have our guidance system. We were supposed to be able to go right into the center of the bullseye like an expert archer, but instead we're blind. We can't see what we're doing. So we have to instead explore this whole entire periphery and spiral inward until we finally reach that last, it's like your glasses are always in the last place you look for them. We find the road out of here, or the road to eternity, is in that last position after we explore all these other possible combinations of thought and belief and action. It's like every single possible iteration before we get to
peripheral timelines, like the side bits.
Everything that is like a wax record that has a groove that spirals all the way in. It's the song of your life, and the record's needle would be analogous to the needle of awareness. The focus, like where we are focusing our consciousness. So let me go to the whiteboard, and now I can do, let's see, share content and go to the whiteboard. Okay, so first I'm going to draw the simplification of the lower quadrant. Oh, is it working? Pen work. Oh, come on, pen work. Pen not working. Oh, how very frustrating. Pen work. Okay, pen is, I swear I charged up the batteries on the pen, but pen not working.
It's working now.
No, well, I'm using my finger now. I'm using my magic finger. So I don't need, my stylus is not working. So that's like the cross section and simplification of this time structure. And I say this little area down here is like birth. I put that at 0, like timeline 0. And all the time that moves forward in this is moving forward in time. And then we have one timeline that's hitting the bullseye, and that allows us to go infinitely because we get through this little wormhole over here. But if I change colors and use a different color to highlight, all of the rest of these timelines, these are all timelines that terminate on the membrane of death. These are all non-eternal timelines. So if I were to draw this same cross-section, but from the top down, like that bullseye that I showed you, here's the outer periphery, and then here's that central little wormhole where you can get to infinity, and here's all of those red timelines that are all around here. The greatest likelihood that we have in terms of experiencing awareness is in this red zone over here. The smallest likelihood is, here I'll use a different color, is this central core timeline in there. There's only one little tiny timeline, only one little opportunity to get out of this level of reality, and 10 million, billion possible possibilities where you don't get out of this reality. Now yes. So you have many different versions of self, and let's say this blue dot that I'm drawing over here, that's the needle of your awareness, which is focused on that particular timeline. Unfortunately, it's not an eternity timeline, but you could still live whatever, 45 or 50 years on that particular timeline. Now let's draw someone else's timelines superimposed on there. Let's draw this person goes like this. This is the purple life of this person in the purple zone over here. And they have their own infinity timeline that goes up through their own little wormhole over there. And then they have their whole own area of, let's find a different color. Like this is their area that I'm drawing in yellow. I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but all of that stuff that they have to go through in order to get to infinity. So the whole idea is there's only one area of coincidence where these two lives meet. I'm highlighting it in black now. That area where they overlap is where the possible realities of these two lives meet and interact. But what it also means is that those are peripheral selves. Those aren't the true eternal aspect of self, and that might not even be where awareness is focused, because the focus of awareness is just like if I'm drawing the retina of your eye, and this is the focal point, fovea of your eye, where you have most of your rods and cones, and then out here in the periphery, you have just a sparse sprinkling of receptors because you're not really supposed to be looking at the periphery. So we're supposed to be focusing all of our awareness on this central timeline. That's like where we're supposed to be, as opposed to all of the dots, the divergent dots that are out here in the periphery. So I'll go back to my face. So when we meet people, so in the video that you were talking about, wait, let me drink some water. In the video you were talking about NPCs, non-player characters. And it's kind of game theory, and I think that's accurate. Not to say that we live in a world that's not real, because and I know I'm joking around a little bit, but I'll tell you. So I'm a walk-in, meaning that I came into this body after the body experienced a metabolic death. When I first came into this body, I questioned the realness of reality. I thought, this didn't feel like a real place. It felt like a simulation or a simulacrum to me. So I had to kind of go through an exploratory process where you have to learn, like, hey, wait a minute. Your body can feel pain. Your body can experience damage. Like, it wasn't until I actually broke my toe that I was like, wait a minute. If my body can feel pain and my body can be damaged, and, I have to eat physical food in order to sustain my body here, then even though I know that this is a dream or a semi-real self-created reality, I have to act as if it is, reality that is structured according to these different rules. So we could say we're in a game, a virtual simulation, and the simulation has rules, because as much as I would like to forego my grocery shopping budget and just eat nothing but pure sunlight, we're not be able to follow those rules yet until we run a different program. That's the idea, that we're in a reality that I'm not a transhumanist. We're not just software programs. We're something much, much more, and something much, much greater than just software. But we're experiencing this level of reality that has different possibilities that are like software programs that are running. And so right now we run the program of having to eat physical food. If we we want to have a different experience, then we literally have to change the software, the structure of our understanding of where we understand nourishment to come from and how we understand our biological cells to be connected to nourishment and to life force energy. It's like, we have to get our operating system upgraded in order to be able to live at that level. So all of this in order to say, we're going through this choose your own adventure novel where if you choose the right choices, if you do blah, 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 if you go in this direction, then you will be able to keep on going. That's what eternal life is. Going through that little wormhole, it means you don't die. You continue going. Here, I'll hold my little sculpture up. You continue going and you continue circulating throughout this structure. But I know a lot of people are very skeptical and traumatized. And they're thinking that I'm promoting this idea, mistakenly thinking that I'm promoting this idea of just endlessly cycling in circles. No. This is not like walking endlessly on the wheels of karma, or this idea of like you have to go through 10,000 lifetimes before you finally get to have that one fulfilling lifetime. That's not what our intended experience was like, because we were intended to have the higher faculties that can guide us through this. So it's not like an external deity that is guiding you and saying, I am the voice of God, and go here, do this. It is an internal perception that allows us to see exactly where to go. Because in that diagram that I was showing, like if the difference between being upright like this or going to the side and going towards the membrane of death, that is based on your own internal choices and your own internal creation. It's not the idea of being like a ping pong ball, just, like a molecule just bouncing around the time field and that something else directs your energy and your consciousness. It's the idea that you're supposed to be able to direct your energy and your consciousness. So all of this, of the idea of peripheral selves, that if you're meeting an NPC, a non-player character, it means that their focus of their awareness is not here at the periphery. We're at the periphery of their lives. And what I define as a peripheral life is a life where you're not being your true self. So let's say that there's a peripheral version of Aurora that's like, I'm not going to be an artist. I'm going to choose to, work in the field of insurance. I'm going to be an insurance salesperson. Go to work every day, right, with wearing a buttoned-up shirt and with a briefcase and selling insurance to people and being in a cubicle. Like, for anyone that knows me, like, Gary's laughing. Because, like, clearly that is a divergence from my real persona. That's not me being my real self. And on that timeline, one of the far peripheral timelines, I probably think, like, yes, I'm just going to work at my insurance job for 30 or 40 more years. And then finally, when I retire, then I'll finally do some painting and I'll finally do some artwork. And there's a lot of people, and I'm not saying that they're bad or evil in any way. There's a lot of people, though, that compromise who they are, who they really are inside. Like dehumanization or human sacrifice can be less literal than absolutely cutting a person's throat and, destroying their body. Right. You can dehumanize or sacrifice a person by making them not able to be their true self. So if you're actually meant to be an artist or a creative person, but you sacrifice that version of your true life and you compromise in order to do something that maybe society rewards you for or society encourages that you do, or that you do for money as opposed to following your own heart. Like when you follow your higher guidance, it is telling you through the feelings of your heart what you really want to do. And I think, like, I don't have to tell other people what their deepest heart's desires are. I think everybody knows. If you didn't, it's kind of like you didn't have to worry about, the daily grind or running on the hamster wheel in order to know in order to get the money that you need to get to, just for basic sustenance in this world. Then what would everybody be doing? So, I'm clearly a painter and a musician and a creator. And some people would be like, oh, I want to be a gardener, or I want to do permaculture, or I want to go fishing, or I want to be a marathon runner. But they're doing their version of the safe job working in a cubicle. It's a divergence from who they're supposed to be. So if you are meeting someone that feels like they're not completely present in their life, it's probably because they're the version of themselves that is not the true version of who they're supposed to be. They're not completely present in their life. Their awareness is actually focused on a different timeline elsewhere. And again, we all have to be really clear. This is not to justify any kind of violence or eugenics program or extermination. Like if we had some kind of a buzzer, like real fake, and then we're gonna cut the heads off of everybody who's fake. Like, that's not what we're supposed to do. That's
right. I said the same thing when I was talking to Richard earlier today. Was that we're so used to labeling everything and boxing it up and saying, that's ugly and bad, keep that away, and even labeling a person NPC can be dangerous, especially when people are in such a this is bad, all this stuff like. So just to let people know and be aware that the dangers of doing that.
Yes, let it never be misinterpreted as any kind of justification for violence or killing someone or, summarily taking away their life or their possessions. It's also like that movie, Breakfast Champions. It's also a book by Kurt Vonnegut, and I read it a long time ago.
Kurt Vonnegut, yes.
He's really, really good. I think the character that I'm thinking about is named Dwayne Hoover, not Dwayne Hubler, but they're the same. They're in the same book. It's very confusing. So he's the main character in the book, and he reads a manuscript that's written in like the second person that says, "You are the only real person who exists, and everyone else is a robot." And he finishes the manuscript, he puts it down, whips out his gun, starts shooting people because he thinks they're all robots. And like, this is not the intent. Like, we're having this awakening where what I'm really perceiving is that many people are having this beginning awakening of their eye of insight, where that's where you see beyond the mere surface, like the veneer of material existence, and begin to see like behind the embroidery. On the surface of the embroidery, it looks like flowers or something like that. But if you look at the underside of the embroidery, it looks like a bunch of knots and weird loops and stuff like that. It doesn't look like flowers. And I think people are starting to open this area of perception and look at the embroidery of time and see how things are connected, but seeing on the anthropomorphic level, like through this human filter of interpretation, it's subject to a lot of, let's say, distortion or something like that. It's the possibility of making mistakes because we're seeing through our human filter, and our human filter isn't perfect. Like, if we're seeing through this abstract filter, it's like particle A, particle B, it's like a molecular realm. We have much less of this different, like this system of interpretation where we can falsely, draw false conclusions based upon what we're seeing. So that's also another reason, like, until your eye of insight is perfectly clear, don't whip out your machine gun, start killing people that you deem to be unreal people. And also, if you really understand the profound implications of this shape and this diagram, and I'll also tell you, I didn't invent this. That I perceive this and I draw it and I make it as diagrams and sculptures. I can't, like, on a deity level, like, I'm God and we're all God and I made it as God. But as Aurora, I didn't invent this. I perceive it and I share it with people. I invented the flying rainbow lasagna, which is like the next highest dimensional version of this. But I'm very clear. Like, I don't pretend that I'm the only person that has ever seen this or knows about this. This is like the language or the alphabet of everything that is. It's like the thing that exists. And then the flying rainbow lasagna is the next thing that we can do with everything that exists. So understanding this and beginning to be able to navigate the time field, like, this is the beginning of self-empowerment, that each person is supposed to be empowered. So, okay, what do we do about non-player character? Like, should we all walk up to them, not with a guillotine or a machine gun, but just be like, hey, you're not really real. You're not the real person that you're supposed to be. Or you're only a fraction of your true self.
Right.
I don't think that that's a productive or appropriate response to what we're understanding. So my response would be not giving attention and energy to someone who is a distortion of who they really could be. I would say focus your energy and attention and awareness on the people that really are, instead of askew, moving in the right direction. And so those are the people, it's everybody has a version of themselves that is that eternal self, but it's not always overlapping with your reality. So if you meet someone who you think is a drone or, an NPC or a person who's not fully present, there's a version of them that is fully present, but it's not on this timeline where you are present. And on the timeline where they are fully present, you are the drone because you are
right.
focusing all of your awareness here.
Yeah.
So that once you start to really embody this and understand that, you're like, well, of course I'm not going to do violence to a drone or an empty or fraction person, because we all have a fraction of ourselves in other places. And what we're trying to do with our experiences here is focus everything that we are into the true self. Like, take all of that energy that's dispersed outward into those, not real realities, like any version of Aurora that's selling insurance. That's like, let's take all the life force, energy, and awareness out of that realm and focus it all here into the real version of me. And that's what that time field is actually doing. That's what all of those membranes of death, that is really like a focuser of awareness. But you don't have to explore every single possible version, every single possible death. I even think that death exists because, on a profound level, when people are on the wrong timeline, like they know they're not fulfilling their true potential. And you can live a perfectly good life. Like there's nothing wrong with being an insurance salesman, but if it's a life of mediocrity instead of your life of greatness, then I think there's a part of you inside that knows like you're just not as much as you could be. Or like maybe you sold some insurance, but maybe you never ran a marathon and you were supposed to do that, but you were so busy selling insurance. You never got a chance to go outside and actually run. There's things that you never got to do. And so I would say not to focus energy and attention on those versions of any one of us that is not the true self. And instead, lavish your attention on everyone who is being their true self. So when you find someone who is, and I'm like, I think in your video, you said you felt like maybe 1 in 100 people was really there. Mm-hmm. Then focus your energy and attention on conversations with those people, or support the work of those people, or interact with and form friendships with those people, and keep on encouraging the life force energy going to the right people. That's what this whole healing is that I think that we're experiencing. And it's like we have personality characteristics that are in the time field that are not actually supposed to be there. And I don't even define them as human. So if we're like, there's an overarching entity that has all these different personality characteristics that make up entity, like a recipe, like a little bit of this, dash of this, and dash of this equals the overarching persona. But not all of those characteristics are supposed to be there. Like maybe there are some that are truly pathogenic and they're not supposed to be in that recipe. So I don't go up to them and say, you are pathogenic aspects of the giant self, and I'm going to talk to you a lot. That's not what I do, even though they would love to talk. They love to have endless conversations. Like, they'll come to you telepathically or through a human conduit and be like, I want to have long, extensive conversations with you. And you have to be like, no, I don't want to have anything to do with you. I want to have conversations. Because to me, those conversations are completely draining. They don't uplift me or feed me in any way, either the internal dialogue or the telepathic experience or the verbalized outer dialogue with someone who's not an eternal personality characteristic. It's like I'm trying to play my good music and they're playing sour notes, and there's no way to integrate harmoniously those two different approaches to reality and to the expression. So find the other good music. Play your own music that's good. Find the other musicians that are good, and don't focus energy and attention on the musicians that are not playing the right notes.
Yeah, it's also the same thing as your dog analogy, where you were saying you learned how they're very clear about who they do and don't like. And I think people have been brought up like, oh, be nice to everybody, be a people pleaser. And if you take example from the dogs, they're doing that for a reason. They're doing that because they know that's not correct for them, so they just simply don't do it. And they're like, rah, go away from me.
I'm totally agreeing with you. And so I'm a walk-in, and I came here in adulthood. I learned all these lessons that most people learn in childhood, and I had to learn, like, oh, you have to be polite to everyone, even though there are some people that are big jerks, and you don't want to be polite to them, and you really want to be like, you want to say to them, I don't want to talk to you. I'm going somewhere else right now, or get away from me. And yeah, it's kind of because I was trying to train my little dog to be super polite like that, and then I realized that there's a very beautiful natural response to something and there's not necessarily something wrong with the other person or dog. It's that they're not meant to interact. So can I talk about satanic technology and the distortion of the time field? Like, can I go into this? Can I delve?
Go ahead.
Good. So when I say satanic technology, I'm referring to a particular space race that uses this type of technology that distorts, I'm picking up my little sculpture here, distorts and hijacks the flow of energy, and this is also the expression of our DNA. And the idea is that our consciousness is supposed to flow in these very particular patterns, like beautiful, perfect figure skaters or perfect ballerinas. We're supposed to be going through these perfect dance patterns, but that there's this, I want to call it an overlay or diversion of energy. That's technology is diverting the natural consciousness energy flow from where it would naturally be flowing into either artificial containers or places where it's not supposed to be. So now, like when I talk about synthetic beings, synthetic people, or like synthetic humanoids, this is the idea that when, like my body, your body, our bodies were made through conception, that initial natural coming together of genetic material in the moment of lovemaking. And I'm saying lovemaking, not merely sexual reproduction. Love is a big part of it. That love creates a shape, like you could call it a geometry. That's this perfect firework explosion and expansion. And that energetic framework is what the cells of the little developing baby that eventually becomes us grows into. So our cells of our body, they're not just all smushed together in some crazy random way. They're actually all put together in a really perfect way, like a puzzle or like Tetris or like one of these paintings or like any a Fabergé egg, where everything fits together really perfectly. And that's why, if you cut your skin and then the skin grows back, you have a scar, because some of those cells don't fit together perfectly with the other cells that were already there from that initial consciousness expansion that turned into our bodies. Now let's contrast that with synthetically created containers for consciousness. And it could be organic, it could be made out of cellular material, but it was made through non-natural processes. That yes, there are actually sophisticated space races that have the capacity to make human-appearing containers of consciousness, but where the cellular structure is not perfectly fit together according to these lovely patterns, like Tetris or a perfect puzzle. They're all just kind of slapped together. It's a degradation.
Like a Frankenstein kind of thing.
Totally Frankenstein's monster. Yeah. It's like an aberration, a thing that's not supposed to exist. And the whole idea is, like, if you have a natural womb, and you have an explosion that goes awry, the fetus doesn't develop properly, like maybe the stomach is on the outside or it never grows skin or whatever, it becomes a non-viable life form. That literally that consciousness container is so damaged or so out of tune that consciousness cannot flow into it. We're talking about the flow of energy. I remember my little yellow sculpture, this is the flow of consciousness, all right? So for consciousness to flow into a fetus, that little container has to be shaped in the right way. It has to be singing the right song and making the right notes, and then consciousness can come into it. So this is like one of these fail-safe mechanisms of, the divine world, of God, of the cosmos. Like if you're going to create life, you want to make sure that you create the right stuff. That if the container is singing the right song, then it can have consciousness come into it. But if it's singing the wrong song, because all of the cells are just kind of mushed together very willy-nilly and without that organizational principle, then technically consciousness should not even be able to go into that container. It's like, like whatever, you're trying to pour water into a glass that's completely cracked. It's like the water is just going to go right out of that container, can't even go in there. So this satanic technology is what makes it possible for consciousness to be temporarily, just for a little while, diverted from where it's supposed to be into a cracked container. And so that can be one of these synthetically created containers that does not have a perfectly formed, harmonically created, divine cell structure, but it can contain consciousness for a little bit of time. And so this can be like an artificially created baby that's implanted in a womb, or it can be something that is grown, in the shape of an adult. But the idea is that it's an aberrant form that really, if you ask consciousness, do you want to live in an aberration or do you want to live in a nice, healthy body? Every single time that it's given a choice, consciousness will say, I want to live in a nice, healthy body. So all these things, like if you were thinking about a warehouse or an apparatus or a place where there are many synthetic bodies being created, if you talked to any of those synthetic bodies as consciousness is coming into them, you say, hey, consciousness, you don't actually have to go into these bodies. You can actually go someplace way more fun and interesting. Consciousness goes where it is way more fun and interesting. That it's like they're like miscarriages. And I don't mean to sound I hope that I do not sound callous or unfeeling. Like if anyone has ever had a miscarriage, like that's not, I'm not trying to say that your baby was bad or wrong or evil or anything, nothing like that. But it's this idea that it takes many tries in order to be able even to get born. Like when I showed that the bullseye, just to be able to get born, like go down the central timeline and have a body, which we all have, which is a miracle. We had to go through all of these different possibilities where, oops, that conception didn't work. Oops, that one didn't work. Oops, no leg. Oops, stomach on the outside. Like, oops, all of these bodies that didn't form correctly until we finally got a viable body. So I say to people, like, just being here and having a body is a huge privilege and a great unlikelihood. Like, just being able to be born is a great unlikelihood. And so then this is also the same question. So, okay, if we have here on our planet right now, and we're kind of like doing the bookend thing. We did one aspect of this in ancient Atlantis, where our society was degraded, our genes were degraded, there were all sorts of genetic experiments, and that destabilized basically the healthy functioning of our entire planet and the magnetosphere of our entire planet. We don't have to repeat that. What we're actually having is the corrective experience, but we're having a similar challenge where we're on this planet. There's like, not that I want to be associated with all of these YouTube videos, but there's many YouTubers that do videos that are all about like celebrity clones, or it's like people are starting to understand, their eyes are opening. They're like, wait a minute, that does not look like a real human. And the truth is, that's not a real human. And there's lots of clones, not just celebrities. There's all sorts of different synthetic beings. What do we do with the synthetic beings? Should we get the guillotine? Should we send them all to the guillotine? Should I get my machine gun? No, everyone, please do not get your machine gun. Please do not go and shoot celebrities because you recognize that they're clone beings. So the best thing to do is to not furnish them with energy. Don't lavish them with attention. Don't buy their books or watch their videos or support their work in any way. And I really have this understanding, not a prediction, but like being able to project, being able to see down the roads of time and feel it too. I feel it in my own mind that even right now there are a lot of people that I can't even remember. And I've never been that much connected to media in terms of TV and movies. Like I've certainly seen stuff. I've seen TV and movies. But I'm not a person that was always like memorizing movies or quoting them or really remembering the actors.
I can't either. I'm terrible.
And all of that stuff, like when we achieve our true selves, all of that stuff melts away. None of that stuff is eternal. So when we could think about this like a journey and we only get to bring as baggage, carry-on baggage in our journey, things that are eternal. So, I mean, this has probably happened to any one of you if you had a family member who died. Like when they were alive, they drove you freaking nuts, right? Like whatever grandma or grandpa, they were always like critical or they said the wrong thing or you couldn't stand certain aspects of them. But after they died, the only aspect of them that you really remembered are the eternal parts. The times when they were kind to you or they gave to you or they were loving to you in some way. That's the eternal stuff. That's the stuff that we can take as carry-on luggage on our eternal journey where we're going. So a lot of things that happen here in the time field are not even eternal experiences. So the idea in Hollywood, in this particular time and place where we find ourselves right now, is that a lot of people, just like in ancient Egypt, we're doing a lot of this reflections of the ancient world. People think the way to be immortal is to get a lot of people to think about you and remember you. But this is the idea, like in ancient Egypt, they thought in order to be immortal, you have to have an edifice, like a sculpture that will be there, chiseled in stone for a long time, or your name written in a hieroglyphic cartouche that can never be erased for a long time, unless somebody comes along and chisels it out because they're trying to erase you from the collective memory. So that's what some Hollywood stars are trying to do also. That they're trying to be like, I will achieve eternal life by being in a movie that everybody remembers, and that way I'll still be alive in everybody's minds. But the point is, a lot of people have sacrificed their true self in order to get to these levels of notoriety in society. So just like there's a version of me that's not my true self, that's working in an insurance company, there's a lot of people that in order to get to their levels of being in the media in any way, they had to sacrifice aspects of their own integrity and not be their true self. So they sacrificed their true self to be on a screen so they think that they can then have an eternal experience of immortality by being lodged in people's minds. But what really ends up happening is it's analogous to if you ever wake up from a dream and you can remember in the dream, oh yeah, I was driving a car and I was sitting, next to some guy, and we went out to get donuts or whatever. And you just remember there was some guy there. When we reach our eternal state, our eternal mental state, we might remember, oh yeah, I saw that movie, and the movie was about this guy that he's suicidal and he was going to jump off a bridge, and the angel talked him out of it. And you don't remember who the actual actor was or details about it. It's like the way that you remember things from a dream. You remember the most salient aspect, but not necessarily all the details. So you might not remember, what the actor's name was who played that part. And that's also the part of, I want to say part of the magic spell, but it's like you live eternally when you have developed the eternal personality characteristics that are supposed to, like a song that's continually played, that's supposed to be played. But if you're just playing a character on a TV show or on a movie, that's not really you. Like, it doesn't matter if lots and lots of people have seen the Star Wars movie and they remember that giant Wookiee character. That's not you. So if everybody remembers, I remember this movie that from when I lived on Earth as a human, and there was a giant, tall, furry character, they don't actually remember who played it. That's a detail that is not germane to everything. So all these people that sacrifice the basic aspects of their soul or their integrity in order to get into those positions to try to be immortal, it doesn't actually work in that way. And that it's attention that makes someone or something really immortal, and it's about the eternal aspect, eternal personality characteristics. So if you do a lot of really awesome things that help a lot of other people as your true self, people know about it, then that's the type of eternal memory, the carry-on luggage that you can actually bring onward. But there's a lot of people, they're not eternal people. And so then also, if your persona is like one of these people that's always quoting movies, like everybody, I used to have a friend like that. Everything I said, he would like respond with a famous quote from a movie. And he's passed on at this point, but I started to understand that many aspects of who he identified with as himself were just filled in from movies and TV. It wasn't his real self. It was just like a filler. And so I would caution everyone, like, whatever. I've certainly memorized things. Like, I used to memorize the Simpsons cartoon show because I'd seen it so many times. But I would say, like, don't identify with that as the truth. That's not who you really are. That's not eternal baggage that you'll take with you, even though you might remember, salient aspects of the cartoon series that you once watched a long time ago.
Yeah, I knew someone like that. I knew people like that as well, that they're like a walking pop culture reference machine, and just you say something and it triggers a scene in them, and they'll say that. But it's easy for me to distinguish between if somebody's like in there, and you can communicate with them, or if they're just basically repeating or directly responding to some sort of information. It's like a tangible difference.
What does the tangible difference feel like, or can you describe more what your experience of that is like? What's your perception like?
It's just energetic. It feels like I can't. It's impossible even to describe in words. It's like facial things. It's whether they're reacting in nuanced ways to your speech. It's like a whole host of things. But otherwise, it's like talking to a wall or something that will like make a little color bleep up as you talk in response, but it's not the kind of response.
I'm totally agreeing with you, and it's a feeling. That's what you said, and I'm agreeing. It's a feeling, and that's part of what we have as our higher perception. Like, we are feeling people, bodies, entities, and we feel other people, and that's part of, like, if you're telepathic, you feel someone's energy signature. That is how you can tell that they're the real person. It's like if they're calling you on the phone and you can see the caller ID, telepathically, you can tell who a person is by how they feel. Mm-hmm. And if I have these different litmus tests, because I don't just want to do telepathic nonsense with AI or synthetic telepaths or whatever. So I'm like, hey, before you get talking, who are you? What's your energetic signature? Like, if something just comes along and wants to talk to me in my head, I'm like, great, but before we get started, what's your energetic signature? And if they can't do that, I'm like, not interested in the conversation. Or here's another good litmus test. Hey, before we get started, can you give me a feeling of love in my heart? And that feeling of love Like I knew this person very tangentially when I lived back in Woodstock. When one time I really needed a ride. Like it was the middle of the night, and I was walking down this road, and rainy. It was horrible and everything like that. I didn't have glasses, I couldn't see. And this guy pulled up and he gave me a ride to where I needed to go. And he is a very lovely person. Again, like I'm talking about all these people who have passed on. He ended up dying of brain cancer, but that's part of the story. So I just knew him very tangentially. And then years later, I was living up in Humboldt in California. I moved across the country, and I was sitting in a restaurant actually, and I read online that he had died of brain cancer. And I was like, oh, like that's too bad. I felt a sadness because he had been kind to me, and he was kind to many people in the community. He was like a really good person. And like it's hard to find examples of people like that, but he was just like a really good, totally cool person. And I felt his energetic presence, like his supernatural after existence presence with me in the restaurant, and it gave me this beautiful feeling of love in my heart. And it felt a little bit like I don't know, like a little bit of tightness, and it like made me cry a little bit. And I was able to calibrate to that. I'm like, that is the feeling of true love. Just like if someone hits like a little voice tuning instrument, like la 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 la, that's the note that we want to find. It was exactly like that, because that guy was really loving. And now when any kind of supernatural, non-physical, whatever person comes up to me and wants to have a conversation, I'm like, I will talk with you. But first, give me a feeling of love in my heart. And if they can't give me that real feeling, I'm like, I am not interested. This is not a real conversation. I don't even feel like I'm connecting with something that ever was alive. Because I think there's a lot of synthetic telepathy that is this AI program, not even an earthbound AI, but an exotic, non-terrestrial AI that runs all these synthetic telepathy programs, and that it doesn't feel. It can't feel the truth of you and me, and we can't feel it. It's like a non-person or a non-entity. And I'll even go further by saying I feel it is that non-terrestrial AI that is the negative personality characteristics that are being expressed through humans on Earth at this point that are not being their true selves. Like some of those peripheral selves are innocent, whatever, hapless cubicle dwellers who just want to sell insurance and have money. And some of them are psychopaths. Some of them are empty, sociopathic, like unfeeling murderers that don't care. I mean, it's hard to imagine that there's a version of me that is an empty, psychopathic, killer, like I'll just pick up my axe and go out and kill people today. But we all have those aspects of self. If you took away all the love and goodness from me, then that is what I would be on the periphery. And I think that is what is part of this synthetic program that's running, and the way to determine if something or someone is real and if they're worth interacting with is if they have a real feeling of love. You can really feel love from them, and it's like, yes, that is a conversation that is worth having. If not, then I'm not interested. And I'll tell you, like more than 99%, there's only a tiny, tiny fraction of anything that I perceive non-physically that is worth interacting with, worth putting energy into. So there's so much static on the line. There's so much nonsense out there. And when I meet this
Aurora,
nonsense,
I gotta get a glass of water. Hold on one second.
Okay.
And
Do you like the smell of this, John?
it actually sort of combines with the bread over there. I'm not sure which one is actually dominating, but maybe the bread is, and I can't smell that very well. I don't know.
This is Palo Santo. Okay.
Taking a cup of tea?
A cup of water.
Good.
Getting parched.
I know. I do so much talking and then I always have to drink, so I'm the same way.
Yeah, I'm turning into Cottonmouth Joe without even talking.
Did you take the trash can somewhere?
It's chilling on the table outside. Julian washed it out.
No.
Okay, so where were we?
So when I meet one of these synthetic telepaths or aspects of self that is not eternal, or artificial intelligence from ancient eras trying to invade our present genetic code, there's no effective way. There's no analogous version of getting the machine gun. Like, what are you gonna? You're gonna put a non-physical being into a guillotine? Like, you can't even do that. So what do I do? And the answer is I send them into entropy. And I bring this up because this is not just something that only I am allowed to do. It's like saying we all have a pencil with an eraser. That's what the mind, the imagination is. You can both make marks like an artist and erase out the things that you don't want. That's also part of artistry. Like when I do drawings and stuff, I make some sketches and I'm like, oh, like that doesn't look right at all. Erase, erase, erase. So the erasing is a huge aspect of the creative act. And it's the same thing with divinity or with God and with our creative partnership in what we're creating. If I meet something that is a sour note or a mark out of place, I erase it. I don't put energy into it. I don't yell and scream at it and say, you're a mark out of place. You're not supposed to be in existence. Like, I don't do that. That's totally counterproductive. What I do is send it into a state of entropy by taking energy away from it. So if energy, like if we have heat, we have movement, like the molecules in the air right now are moving all around. That is because of heat, and so we have molecular movement. If I took all the energy out of the room, that would be making the room very, very cold. Let's say I suck all of the energy out of the room. All of a sudden, the molecules don't move around anymore. The biological bodies don't move around anymore. The neurological processes don't move around anymore. Movement and movement through time is based in having energy. And if you send a being to entropy, what you're doing literally is taking energy away from it, like units of energy. We'll think of it like dollar bills or gas from the car. Take gas out of the car, and the car cannot go. And this is not like a violent unmaking or anything like that. It's not like stabbing someone to death or anything like that. It's taking energy away from it. And I also use this flying rainbow lasagna shape and concept to send the energy where it's supposed to be. Because all of that energy that's out of place, it all got stolen. It all got taken from someone that wasn't like, that's the redirection of consciousness as it's supposed to be flowing in these perfect ballerina-like patterns. And this artificial technology comes along and says, oh, no, consciousness, you don't get to flow where you really want to flow. I'm going to make you flow here. It's the definition of malevolent ego. That if we can say there's this divine persona that's supposed to be where energy is supposed to be flowing, but then there's this little sub-persona that says, I need to know that I exist. I'm going to redirect that energy so I can prove that I exist. It's like if you're in a band and the music is sounding so good, like everything is flowing, the music is sounding so good, but you're like, I need to prove my own existence. I'm going to fuck things up so that everyone can hear that I exist. It's like that is the definition of what we're experiencing. You need these errant personality characteristics. So the solution is taking away their drumsticks, taking away their instrument, taking away their energy so that they can't make that music anymore. That need to be recognized is arising from something that knows that it's not eternal. That if you're eternal, you literally don't have anything to prove. You know that you exist. You know that you're eternal. You know you're part of the music of the cosmos. You don't have to do some crazy drum beat in order to prove that you exist to other people or to yourself. So this idea of these beings took their energy from someone else. So it's taken through, rape or torture or murder. Like it's not pretty. This is what the origins of these animal sacrifice religions are, or human sacrifice, or even the idea, like I was speaking about earlier, sacrificing your true persona. If my true persona is supposed to be an artist working in my studio, but instead I'm in a cubicle selling insurance, I've literally killed my true self, my true persona, and put on a suit of clothes, and I'm wearing a timeline that's not the real me. And that literally creates death. That literally takes you from going up the central timeline and makes you go to the death timeline where you're going to hit the membrane of death. And that a big part of learning to navigate the time field and go on the timeline that we want to be on is kind of like saying, screw you to society. Like, I know it's highly inconvenient to use society, but I don't want to work in a cubicle and sell insurance because that's not my true self. I'm trying to say it's often highly inconvenient to the structure of human society and economy to be your true self. And guess what? That's too effing bad. Like, it's just too bad. Yes, it's very inconvenient, but that's like you were made as a divine being to be here in a particular shape and to be doing particular activities. And so there's all these social and economic pressures to say, don't do the activities that you're actually meant to do. Compromise who you are and do these other things instead. Be this other person instead. So the sacrifice is sometimes overt, like physical murder or mutilation, like circumcision,
Whoops. You're kind of breaking up. I think my connection is trying to go out a bit.
Anyway, tell me if things are better.
Ah, you're back. Yeah.
Good.
Internet connection was unstable for a bit.
Can we keep on going, do you think?
Yeah.
Cool. Were you able to hear what was the last thing you heard?
You're breaking up again. Hold on one sec. I gotta pee. I'll be back.
Okay. Good, Chicky. You're wonderful. Mm-hmm. It's my boss.
Okay.
Is thing working okay right now?
Yeah. It was just like an unstable internet connection. You were doing that.
And that's so frustrating to try to listen to.
Buffering.
Yes.
Yeah. You're good now, though.
And also, I don't need to be flapping my moving mouth parts so much without giving you a chance to talk and say things too.
No, it's fine.
Hey, if you talk about chair.
It's always good to try to take what you're saying and relate it to more normal people, so to speak. Because sometimes you talk in kind of technical terms and, like you said, abstract terms. So I just see these so-called NPCs as they're just, like you said, they're less present. And it's not something that's bad or something that you need to, like you said, go and try to hunt down or anything like that. It's just, if you're putting your energy to that,
Did you just clean up those ashes?
then it drains you. It drains me
yeah.
when I put my energy to those.
Oh, so I wanted to talk about the laws of the jungle, right? So if none of this satanic distortion event technology was going on, like when I talk about satanic technology or dark magic, it literally changes the flow of events, like what you experience during the day, who you interact with, who you are as a person. So if that weren't happening, what would we would experience something that is very beautiful. I don't mean like laws of the jungle in an evil brutish way. I mean, almost more in the way that the indigenous mythological perspective looks at every interaction of every animal and every plant and everything that is being eaten or eating someone else as a sacred experience. Like this whole idea of, if you're completely non-technological, and if you're relying completely upon your own inner divinity and the natural world to sustain you, this is some of the indigenous viewpoint of if it crosses my path, then I have the opportunity to eat it, right? Because we're not going to the grocery store and picking up the shiniest apple. This is about, well, if a snake crosses my path, then I'm supposed to hunt that snake and eat it. It's a very different approach. And again, this is like in the purest, most undiluted terms of events following the patterns that they're supposed to follow. And the idea of laws of the jungle, when I say that, and it's like, only the strong shall survive, and to the victor go the spoils. It is fair if everybody is playing the music that they're supposed to play. And again, I hope nobody takes this out of context or uses it as some kind of justification for picking up a gun or a knife and killing people. That's not what I'm trying to say. If that distortion technology did not exist, however, then whatever animal meets with and interacts with another animal and fights it fairly in a battle, that is supposed to happen. And the being that emerges, and that is able to survive is the being that had the most integrity, the strongest, not just muscles, but the strongest time structure. So if it's like, okay, we've got a cheetah versus a crocodile, like who is going to win? Like one of these nature documentaries. And if there's no technology being applied here, and I also mean like no distortion of consciousness or genetic technology, then it's a larger art mural that is being played out on the canvas of nature. That's what is supposed to be happening. But that's not what's been happening for a very long amount of time. So we can't apply that approach to humanity or to domesticated animals or to anything that we're experiencing right now. Not even the plant kingdom, the idea of who pollinates whom, like how do seeds get made. None of that is natural at this point. But if we didn't have these levels of distortion, then it means like it's kind of like if we look at this like game theory. Okay, you're walking down a path in the woods. A deer comes out of the forest. What do you do? So if you're doing game theory, you say, well, that's not a random deer. Why did it cross my path at this point? I'm supposed to do something. Like in our world right now, because there's so much static on the line, so much distortion of events, or like technological distortion of events, if you're walking through the woods and a deer crosses your path, you don't necessarily know if it is a significant event. Is it a message to you? Is it a totem? Does it mean you should kill it and eat it? Like right now, it's very difficult to tell. We don't know that. If we lived in a completely unperturbed time field where everything was according to the perfect divine music, then we would know, oh, look, a grasshopper just jumped across my path. That means this, or I'm supposed to do this in response to this other organism. So I understand it's very difficult for humans right now as musicians to even know what notes do we play, what is significant. And so a big part of this awakening of this aspect of our anatomy, this is our symbolic perception and capacity to interpret symbols. Like because language is sonic symbols, so we're used to this, but it's been hacked and distorted a lot. But this symbolic language and insight and understanding goes beyond language. So it's abstraction. We can look at an abstract symbol, like these things that I draw and these shapes that I'm holding up here. These are abstract symbols, and they've not been put into this system of interpretation of words that can be so easily distorted. And so you gotta watch out though, because right now, like I know a lot of people don't have accurate symbolic interpretation. But when your eyesight is clear, when this eyesight is clear up here, and when you're really connected to the, divine librarian that tells you, like, look over there, look at that symbol over there, look at that over there, then the entire world and our entire experience becomes a library of symbols that we are reading as we're walking through the time field. It's not some random collection of things that are just happening around us, just like if you're walking through a pristine forest. You're not just walking through some random collection of plants and animals and fungi. You're walking through a very specific library and ecosystem and interdependent, harmonic, presentation of consciousness that you might not even be sophisticated enough to read the symbolic structure of how everything is interacting. So if we are able to get rid of this dark technology that distorts the time field, and if we are able to awaken our inner eye, like when I say like open your inner eye or awaken this has been artificially suppressed by this same technology that has infected our world. It diminished the DNA and the expression of consciousness through the human container. And this is like how you see through time. This is how you understand which timeline to be on. And like, should I choose to be an insurance salesman in a cubicle, or should I choose to be an artist working in the studio? Well, a lot of that, the information that we base those choices on, comes from insight, inner sight. But that insight has been suppressed or degraded. It's our birthright. Everyone is supposed to have it. It's not just for special people. And it's supposed to be something that we all have through our lives. Yeah.
Did you have any opportunities to become an insurance salesman that you kind of said, maybe that doesn't feel correct in this particular timeline?
It's so funny. It's not that I specifically have that, but I do remember, as Aurora, when I got here the first couple of years, I had some very simple jobs. One of my first jobs was working in an art supply store, and I worked it was like a very humble job, just like stocking shelves or whatever. And I do remember this businessman came in, and he offered me his business card, and it was one of these like insurance salesmen. I don't know if it was a pyramid scheme or if it was a viable opportunity or whatever, but I actually took that card and I actually tried to think my way forward and project onto those timelines, like, what would that be like? Because I imagined that I would get all of this positive social response of, good for you, like you got like a quote unquote good job. You drive your car every day to your good job, and you drink your coffee in your cubicle and type on the computer. And clearly I didn't follow up on it. It wasn't something that really interested me, but it was enough, like a seed was planted enough to consider, like, what would my life be like? And clearly I would never have painted this painting. I would never have painted this painting. I would not be wearing this sweater. I would not be here. I would not have these earrings. I would not, all of these things. And so let's say this. Maybe the time field needs to have these sculptures and these images in it, and for other people to see these concepts and to be inspired by them, or to have access to this information. And if I was busy typing on a computer in a cubicle and selling people insurance, I might help them out with their homeowner's insurance, or maybe I might be helping humanity in some way. But no one would paint this painting. And then there'd be a big, giant, empty spot in the time field where no one would be able to see that painting that they're supposed to see at a certain point. Or no one would be able to see this sculpture that they're supposed to see at a certain point. So a lot of this idea of being a puzzle piece in the time field, like when you do the right things you're supposed to really be doing, you're like a musician or a collaborator that's setting things up for the next guy. And we're doing this across millennia. We are ancient beings that have done things in the past that sent things reverberating forward to this moment now. And what we're doing now also sends things forward into the future. So it's a high stakes game. It's not just about you filling your own belly now, or having a 401k, or living life, and doing things for the short term very myopically. It's also understanding that all of these timelines are connected. All of these possibilities and probabilities are connected across many lifetimes. And when you make a compromise, like deep inside, you make a compromise. And the bigger the compromise, the more distorted the experience of moving through time becomes. Like, here's a big compromise, like marrying the wrong guy. Lots of people do this. They're like, I'm not really in love. I don't really want this person. I know he's not my Prince Charming, but a stable financial foundation, or but positive social reflection, or but any of these things like that you think you're supposed to do. And lots of people make compromises, and then years later they're like, married the wrong guy, and then what do you do? Or married the wrong woman, or had a baby with the wrong person, or any of those profound life choices where it's like, okay, that is literally means that there are things that you're supposed to be doing that you're not doing, or opportunities that you're supposed to be participating in that you can't participate in, that other people are depending upon, because we're all these musicians playing together. Or like relay racers, if you're running around the track and it's a relay race and you're running and you have the baton, and you have to pass it off to the next person. Or if you're standing there, you're ready to go, you're like waiting for that baton. It's like, I'm waiting. That guy ain't here. He's supposed to pass me the baton. What am I supposed to do in my life? Because that guy decided to be an insurance broker instead of actually doing what he's supposed to do in his life. So a lot of this is dilating one's own personal sense of, dilate your identity beyond your personal sense of this container, this particular life, to understand that all of these lives fit together. That when each one of us is on the right track, we're on the right timeline, we're making the right choices, we're passing the baton to the next guy who then uses it and passes it to the next person. And if you're not making the right choices and you're not embodying the right timelines, then you're literally not there doing the things you're supposed to do. But I'm not trying to demonize or whatever, cast judgment against people that aren't living their most stellar life. That I'm just saying, like, that's what the sacrifice is. That's why it is rewarded. That's why mediocrity is rewarded. That's why, like, just getting a stupid cubicle job and, like, just doing something that pleases society, you get rewarded. You get a pat on the head, you get a paycheck. Good job. Thank you for compromising your life. Mm-hmm. It's like, that's not, but you know inside that it's not right, but people do it. And then, and living a life that is uncompromised is often seen like, how very irresponsible. Like, I'm so disappointed in you that you decided to live your life with integrity and do the things that you really know you need to do inside. That is often what the response is from both society or whatever, surrounding social structure.
It's difficult to be genuine because we have pre-filled roles that require a certain type of person, and you have to have a certain skill set. Like, these jobs don't ever just say, hey, you as the human that you are, come be here, be yourself, and we'll give you a paycheck. That's not how it works. But we have to kind of wrap up pretty soon. I gotta go visit my baby, and we're up at like an hour and a half, I think. So
absolutely. Let me respond one more to what you said about I don't want it to slip away. Okay, maybe we have to wrap up if I'm not remembering the last thing you just said.
Give it a second, maybe it will come back.
What did you say? That very last thing that you were just saying about?
Oh, about how jobs don't just pay you for being yourself. Like, this is genuine me, and please let me have a shelter and, food and all this. You almost have to compromise unless you want to be a starving artist or something like that.
So that's the human sacrifice, that you don't get to be your true self at the cubicle job. You have to change and do this and do this and do this, and then you will be accepted in that position. And that literally, yes, you'll be caused to starve if you don't change yourself on a basic level. And the changing yourself on a basic level means changing the dance and the behavior of your DNA. That if you want to dance like a particular thought structure and a particular music structure, then you go into some of these positions and they're like, okay, we'll give you the paycheck, but only if you stop dancing like that and you dance like this instead. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't feel very good. So if you're like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to work at my job, but I'm still going to dance like this. And then they're basically like, you end up losing the job because you can't integrate harmonically with you being your true self, making your true music in that format. And so a lot of it is, I think from the education, from the early years of early education through into being a person that is an employed person, the idea of mitigating your own desires of who you really want to be in order to fit in. Like, if you're a little kid, you want to wiggle, you want to run around, you want to do fun stuff. You don't want to sit perfectly still in your little desk and stare at the teacher and learn you hold your pencil in the right way. Right. So you have to learn, like, I'm not allowed to run around. I have to hold my pencil. I'm not allowed to do what I want to do. And then just translate that into adulthood where you're like, I'm not allowed to garden every day or sleep until 10 or, wear my pajamas all day. I have to wear my buttoned-up shirt and go to work and drive at this particular time and do all these different things. So it's that idea of, what are you talking about? Like, you're not allowed to just be a natural human. Like, that's crazy. You're supposed to be an unnatural human. If we were natural humans, yeah, we would get up at sunrise and eat when we're hungry and poop when we need to. That not to be too TMI or whatever, but I had to actually learn that a lot of people have to be like, I can't poop at this time because I'm busy working. Like, that's crazy to me. Like, you're supposed to be able to, do your bodily processes when you need to, but not the domesticated human that has to work and get the pat on the head and be given the paycheck. So yeah, you have to learn to mitigate your bodily desires. You can't eat when you want to eat. You can't poop when you want to poop. You can't rest when you're tired. And this is incredibly stressful and aging on the entire body, and it's a disrespect to humans on a basic level. It's like the domesticated human, like a dog. Not to offend any dogs.
Yeah, we're working on it as a collective. I think good things are happening. It's just a slow process, and people have been, like I said earlier, people have been traumatized and they have been forced into things because not everybody can just say, I want to be my true self and I want to be able to give fully to my potential. Sometimes that just doesn't work, and you get forced into these things. So we do our best though. Like you have to give it your best every day,
It's a process of development, just like being an athlete. It's not an instant snap your fingers, now you can run a marathon thing. So becoming the true self and letting go of the baggage of who is not the true self is a process. And I won't describe the bars on the cage in excruciating infinite detail without bringing up the solution, which is the key out of the cage, which is the flying rainbow lasagna, this genetic oscillation. That means that whatever you've been given in terms of the scripted reality and the scripted expectations of human biology, economy, sociology, this is how you transcend those limitations. Like that, I'll just end on that as a super positive note, because I never mean to be like, here's everything that's wrong with the world and there are no solutions. That's not how I look at all of this at all. So yeah, my whole idea and what I like to share with my work is this idea that you can turn this basic structure into this higher dimensional structure by putting it in a hyperdimensional context and making it oscillate and move, making it jump up and down, turns into this, and that this gives greater degrees of freedom, where you don't have to work in a cubicle, where you can write a better story with the pencil and eraser of the consciousness of your consciousness. You can write a better story, and that we as a planet can write a better story than that humans are struggling and humans are starving and babies eat out of garbage heaps in order to stay alive, or that babies are the product of rape or any of those things. We can, as a collective and as a planet, write a better story, and that this emanates outward into all these other levels of reality.
Yeah. Write a better story. That's what everybody, that's what I do with my personal life. And I think within the parameters that you're given, don't think you're just going to all of a sudden bang into something entirely different. Yes. Work within your parameters and just see if you can do something different. See if you can alter your routines and go slowly.
That's right. Just like in a narrative story, we're like, first we were doing this and then this thing happened and that's why it changed and now we're doing this. So it's just a question of using your imagination to imagine, what is that integument? What ties together the old paradigm? We used to do this, and then now we changed, and now we do this. And this is like, it's your own imagination. It's the power of your own, internal thought structure that you can create that new possibility. And whatever, it can be nonviolent and completely beautiful. It can be wonderful.
Yeah. Should be nonviolent, and it should be beautiful. Hopefully,
yes.
we'll move energetically in that direction.
Yes.
So, do you want to bring Chiki in for a goodbye?
I would love to. Well, Boss has been sitting on my lap the whole time. When you had a little break, I was showing everyone, look who I got down here. Look, that's my dog, Boss. She's been right down here the whole time. She's awesome, and she's been very, very patient. So I definitely have to give her some hugs and some treats and go for a little walk after this. So thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to be on your show again, Gary. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Aurora. I'll see you next time, okay?
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Bye, Chiki. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye. We love you.
I have that gray box. I have that gray box. On your screen.
Oh, that.